Hello again, my name is Hannah Kasab, and today I'd like to talk to you about the rise of China and the so-called decline of the United States. Um, the situation posited by many scholars is that the United States is indeed in decline and China is rising as a great power, as maybe a new hegemon or a counter hegemon. Now, a hegemon is just the biggest country who manages the world economy and world politic, and a counter hegemon is the challenge to that rule. And I argue that in order to avert any crisis, diplomacy must be used by both Chinese and the United States to kind of give China some space, some room to grow, and some room to stretch, let's say, stretch its legs in its spheres of influence, Eastern Asia. Now, the United States has wasn't I would say has, or it continues to be a hegemonic bloc, a hegemonic power. In the 1990s, with the fall of the Soviet Union, it enjoyed unipolar status. Uh, Under Clinton, the country really grew economically. Um, China was invited to the WTO, and it seemed like there would be an end of history, as Fukuyama says, end of history in a sense of this was the end of progress, and that this would be life as it is, democracy and capitalism working together for a brighter world, and so forth. But with the election of George W. Bush and this more aggressive democracy, where democracy was to be exported and transplanted uh, into countries that may not want to have a system done, implanted militarily. I'm talking about Iraq in 2003. So the Iraqi war cost, as you know, costs a lot of money, and that money maybe it could have been spent, better. It could have been spent, on social programs, healthcare, education, infrastructure. It could have been used to, I don't know, you could just dig a hole in the Arizona desert and fill it back up, and I think it would have been more productive than the 2003 war. Um, so that huge amount of spending, coupled with low taxes, has led to this massive debt, and China, fueled American consumption and spending by buying bonds, giving American bonds, giving the Americans the capacity to overspend. Now, this posed, everyone benefited from this kind of relationship. The United States could spend. It could spend beyond its means, beyond the amount of taxes it raised in that year. For China, it allowed them to hold a bond which yields a higher interest rate than if it just sat in the treasury. So that's the crux of the issue. So everyone benefited from that arrangement. Um, at the same time, we have this growing reliance on China for them to continue buying bonds. Now, many people argue that this is sustainable, and since it's in everybody's interest, it will continue in a way that is sound. I argue not so much, because if the Chinese really do continue buying up the U.S. bonds, that it's going to cost them. There's a transaction cost if the if you spend that, if you buy up your euros and you diversify your currency holdings, you have much more to gain than concentrating on that one currency. Um, so I'm not saying that the Chinese are going to just throw the money onto the world economy, the US dollars on the world economy, therefore collapsing the economy. I'm not arguing that. I mean, that is a possibility, but it's a drastic step that would be it would be a drastic step that would ruin relations with China and with when it comes to the United States. Um, But we are in a precarious situation. The world is in this situation of there's a lot of ambiguity. So at this point in time, I think diplomacy um, and giving China some space to move in the world when it comes to policy and politics and so forth, that would be a vital first step into actually getting a more of a cooperative uh, situation or environment. And in that we can, the safety and security of the world really is at stake. Um, I want to recall that situation a few months ago when the Chinese sort of put up this no-fly zone over its these islands that they're over the seas that they're contesting with Japan, and there was a violation of that by the Japanese and the Americans. That's a situation that we could have done without that kind of tension and that kind of fostering of bad blood. It has no place in the world right now. So, um, again, my recommendation would be speaking, dialogue, continued recognition of China's power, just as a way to kind of divert the world, or just to buy some time, let's say, uh, to kind of solve that problem there, and also to recognize that the United States is not in a situation to start up another war. It's just not. You know, you can argue that they have more military capabilities, but that's a road you just don't want to go down. Uh, Given the first of all, it wouldn't solve anything, and second of all, that's a war that it's a war that's unspeakable. I mean, in 2014, we're in 2014, and 100 years ago, we had World War One, which was a war. It kind of in the same situation where you had a rising power and a kind of the rising power in Germany, and you had more traditional powers of Britain and France. And if Germany was just given that space to operate, then given the historical situations of the past decade in 1914, the crisis in the Balkans, maybe World War One could have been averted, because at the end of the day, World War One that led to World War Two.